Hey everybody, welcome back to One Mic, and today I'm here to talk about Season 1, Episodes 1 and 2 of HBO's Dune Prophecy, entitled The Hidden Hand and Two Wolves, respectively. First off, I'd like to apologize for not getting a video up for Episode 1. I watched it the night of the premiere, and I even started my notes for it that next morning, that Monday morning, but so many other things came out that week. Between trying to keep up with the 5-episode drop for Day of the Jackal, the entire season drop of Say Nothing on FX, this show, Silo, Landman, it was all a lot. What ultimately happened though was that Say Nothing was so good that I shifted all of my attention in that direction and toward finishing those 9 episodes and getting a video up for that. You know, something had to be placed on the back burner and it ended up being this show. And now after 2 episodes, I don't feel particularly bad about it because Say Nothing is one of the best shows of the year, and this is, let's say, off to a good start. Off to a slow start. I wish I could say it was off to a good start. It is. It is. It's not bad. It's just off to a slow start. But after 2 episodes, I'm still not quite sure what this show is about. And that's not to say that nothing has happened, but I'm just not sure where this is going or what it's meant to accomplish. Like right now, it kind of just feels like a bunch of stuff happening within the world of Dune rather than a show that has like a targeted destination and goals that it's trying to achieve in its storytelling. And while the bunch of stuff happening within the world of Dune is mostly entertaining, the fact that the show's goals are so murky is it's starting to make it feel like it's dragging a little bit. Like we know that the Sisterhood wants one of their own on the throne. We know that a rebellion is taking place and it had a pivotal battle that just took place on Arrakis. We know that Desmond Hart has nefarious plans. It's just that none of these things seem to be pointing this show in a specific direction. They just feel like useful bits of information. But like, where are we going with this? Like that lack of direction makes this continued like collection of information feel like nothing more than that, like collected information rather than like bricks being laid as the foundation of a good story. So the premiere opens with like a ton of like voiceover exposition, and while I don't mind that in a general sense, it went on so long that I started to wonder when we were going to get to the story that this show was going to tell. But then at the same time, I feel like a lot of people out there have been overstating the nature of the voiceover. Like I watched it, it was like maybe like the first 10 minutes or something. Like people make it seem like it was like the first half of the episode or some shit. But there's a group of people who are just like automatically, oh, voiceover, that's bad. And that makes me a good critic to say that. But like the voiceover itself was fine. It was a little bit excessive, but it wasn't any more than 10 minutes. You know, as a matter of fact, I said that the voiceover, I was beginning to wonder when it would end so I could, learn what this story was going to be, what story this show wanted to tell. But even after the 10 minutes of voiceover, it probably got, probably got 40 minutes into the first episode, and I was still kind of wondering, like, where is this going to go? And now, here we sit at the end of episode 2, and while yes, I think the picture has become clearer, it still kind of feels like this show is like, still like in ramping up mode. Things are happening, those things are interesting, but this show still, it feels not just like a collection of interesting things happen, but like a collection of interesting things happening that don't quite feel like Dune, rather than like a cohesive story that's actually within the Dune universe. I know that's like a weird distinction to make, but I'm gonna flesh that out a little bit as we go forward. And you all may call bullshit on that and disagree with me and think this show is the shit, and that's cool. But at the end of the day, I'm tasked with figuring out why this show hasn't like ignited anything in me when I think that the 2 films are 2 of the best things to happen to cinema in a very long time. And like I said, I think it's because this show doesn't quite feel like Dune. It feels more like something that's trying to be Game of Thrones or Star Wars than a show meant to make the Dune world that we know through the films feel a little bit more robust. It also feels like it doesn't have a direction yet. I've said that already. We're through 2 hours out of 6, and it feels like we're getting like a random collection of clues that are meant to solve a mystery that we don't know what that mystery is just yet. Hey everybody, I just want to take a small break from this review to talk about the various other ways you can engage with me on other platforms. If you're so inclined, and I understand why you wouldn't, I am an acquired taste, but you can join the Patreon where you can get extra content like retro reviews, where I review old shows and movies to see if they still hold up today. Mike's Musings, where I talk about shows I'm watching that I don't cover on the channel, or Mike's VOD, where you can commission me to watch a show, which I will then review on the channel. And if you want to engage with me and chat with me more directly, I also implore you to join the Discord and follow the Facebook page. I set up channels in the Discord for all of us to discuss the shows I'm reviewing on the channel, and I also drop new videos in there since it's the easiest platform for me to share to from my phone. The Facebook can be really fun because I sort of live comment on shows I'm watching, often while under the influence, I'm not going to lie. And I'll also share news there, both about television and film and about myself as well. So if you like my content, you want to be more engaged, you think I'm charming, or you simply want to show support, feel free to sign up for the Patreon or join the Discord or Facebook today. Links to all platforms are in every video description. Remember to share all my shit to your respective social media platforms. And now back to this review. So I've opened this video being, I think, fairly hard on the show, but I mean, it's out of love. I want to like this show, which is very rare for me to feel, let alone articulate. This show got a version of me that was already predisposed to liking it, and that's important to point out given how critical I've been so far of the show in this video. But there's a lot to like here, as well as a lot of reason to be hopeful about what this show can become in these final 6 episodes. So let's get into talk about what happened in these first 2 episodes, what I liked, what I didn't, why. And I want to start by making sure we're all clear on who's who and what's going on. I don't like to do much of like, this happened and then this happened. It's kind of like recapping an episode. That's not what I'm here to do. But I'm going to do a little bit of that to start because there's a lot of things in motion in these first 2 episodes. A lot of characters are introduced. And it's important that we're clear on these things and that these people, if we're to like properly, not just properly enjoy, but properly assess this show as well. So like I said a moment ago, the premiere opens with about 10 minutes of voiceover exposition that tells the story of Valia and Tula Harkonnen. Through voiceover, Valia tells the story of a war between humans and the thinking machines, in which House Atreides is celebrated for helping win the war, but Valia's great-grandfather, a Harkonnen, obviously, is now known for deserting that fight. Being seen as like outcasts within their house, or within the world, really, it prompts Valia to join up with Raquella and the Sisterhood, which will later become the Bene Gesserit. Raquella was a hero during the war, and she now trains women to become truthsayers, which are women who help separate fact from fiction, and they also serve the great houses. And there are several scenes of the premiere where we see how they operate. Some scenes better than others, but we see that they like touch their index finger and thumb together, and I guess that's like like our cue that they're about to like activate their body language assessors or some shit. Like all of the things that they see when they do that, you can see without doing that. So I don't know, but it's a thing. It's what they do. Raquella also developed a breeding program to help cultivate better leaders. She used her vast genetic archive to foster the right royal unions and create rulers that her and the Truthsayers could essentially control. But this divided the Truthsayers because some felt like this was too similar to playing God, and they considered it heresy. This group of people who don't side with Raquella were led by Raquella's own granddaughter, Dorothea. On her deathbed, Raquella has a vision, and she warns of Terran Arafel, which is a holy judgment brought on by a tyrant. And she tells Valia that she will see the burning truth and know. This prompts Valia to want to put one of the sisters, on the throne in order to protect the Sisterhood. But I think it also sets the stage for Valia to likely be the tyrant who brings about the holy judgment. So she's setting the circumstances to create the thing that she's trying to avoid. That's a theory that I have that I'm going to get into in a little bit. Dorothea seemingly means to end the breeding program by destroying the breeding index, but Valia uses the newly developed voice to make Dorothea kill herself. And I think a bit of lore here. I don't know if this is consistent with the books, but a little bit of lore here says that Valia essentially created the voice that we see in the films. And I like this scene because even though the voice sounds very different from what we heard in the films, it's kind of like a more of a raspy yell. It does properly relay the idea that the voice started out as, created by Valia as like this rough idea, this thing she's trying out. And over the course of 10,000 years, it's been honed into what we see Paul doing in the films. Valia ascends to the Mother Superior role, but even 30 years later, there's still division within the Sisterhood regarding whether or not the group values the sisters themselves, like the individuals taking care of one another, or more so like the Sisterhood as an organization that's being put above the individuals. Meanwhile, we have Emperor Havoko Carino. He's played by Mark Strong. He's having trouble with uprisings on Arrakis, and they're interfering with spice production. You know, usual Dune shit, right? He's set to marry his daughter Inez, who is called Nez throughout the course of the show, but it's Ynez initially. He's set to marry his daughter to the 9-year-old son of Duke Richesi, who will turn. This kid's name is Pruitt. Who will in turn, Duke Richesi is going to provide a fleet of ships that's going to help Carino wrangle in the unrest that's happening on Arrakis. But an apparent survivor from a recent attack by Fremen on Arrakis, a guy named Desmond Hart, he arrives in front of Havoko and claims that they weren't attacked by Fremen, but they were attacked by men from the Imperium. Desmond says several times over the course of these 2 episodes that he only wants what's best for the Imperium, not unlike Varys from Game of Thrones. He also claims he was given a gift following his surviving of this attack on Arrakis, and he uses said gift to immolate the 9-year-old Prince Pruitt. That's essentially offering up someone as a sacrifice via burning. But this one he burns him from the inside out, which is pretty cool to say the least, although tough to watch. At the same time, the same thing happens to Kasha. That's Carino's truthsayer, on an entirely different planet at the school that the truthsayers are in. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the basic setup that we get in the premiere. The Sisterhood's worried about a reckoning, Emperor's trying to regain his grasp on Arrakis, and Desmond Hart is up to no good. All right, so now that we've kind of laid out what's going on, who everyone is, you guys should have a good idea of you put the names to faces, all that good stuff. Let's get into what worked for me and what didn't. And I want to start with what the issues that I had. For starters, I was instantly like a bit put off by how the events of this show take place 10,000 years before the death of Paul Atreides. But despite that, everything is exactly the same. And you can have a lot of years pass with everything being exactly the same for me to not call bullshit. But 10,000 years is a bit too long to have the same armor technology and everything to revolve around spice on Arrakis. It's still they haven't really progressed much in 10,000 years. And we know that yes, it's partially due to the removal of machines, but it's still we can have some bit of growth, right? Some gonna be a little different. Even our priorities, it's still about Arrakis. What about one of the other planets? Anyway, here's the thing with that. I think they did it so that this show feels more like Dune. They're throwing in these recognizable aspects of the movie into the TV show, and it doesn't necessarily make it feel more like Dune. This show feels more like Game of Thrones or Star Wars than Dune. It just feels like Game of Thrones or Star Wars with spice, House Harkonnen, and that glowing armor shit. Take for instance the drug/party scenes in episode 1 and the sex scene in episode 2. Neither of those moments felt like they belonged in this show. And the sex scene in particular was strangely long and equally as pointless. I was sitting there kind of why are we even seeing this right now? And both of these moments felt more like a show trying to mimic Game of Thrones rather than a show living within its own universe. And then you have Desmond's character, which, like I mentioned earlier, he parrots the same goals as Varys did throughout Game of Thrones. And look, Travis Fimmel is really good at playing these characters that seem like they have a screw or two loose. But this character felt completely identical to his Marcus character on Raised by Wolves. And hey, I know a lot of people have not seen Raised by Wolves. That's fine. So that aspect may not matter to you at all. But if you did see Raised by Wolves, this Desmond character is a lot more difficult to appreciate because we've already seen this exact same fucking character already before, played by this exact same fucking guy. You don't even have to have watched Raised by Wolves. Google it and look up screen caps of Travis Fimmel's character and tell me it's not the exact same fucking guy. And my favorite thing about the Dune films is that they created their own feel, their own vibe, their own aesthetic. It felt like something fresh in the world of sci-fi and in the world of cinema for us in 2023 and 2024. Or actually, no, even before that. I don't even remember when the first one came out. 2021, 22? I don't know. But right now, this show just seems to be pulling influences from all over the world of sci-fi and fantasy. And the only stuff that feels like Dune is the names of the characters and the locations. There's also a really bad training montage in episode 1 that again the like the drug and sex scenes, it felt like it was ripped from an entirely different show. Like there are two aspects of this montage, both of them pretty shitty. One part of the montage is shots of the women training in the rain, and I'm telling you, like, maybe they're trying to give the idea that these girls are new to fighting, or that like physical behavior is beneath them because they battle mentally and strategically like that. But you need to do or say something to get that point across, because all I saw was what looked like really lazy and uninspired choreography. And I'm like, no, I'm watching this, I'm like, what the CW is this shit? Like, it was like they didn't even have choreography. Like, someone just told them, like, yeah, go out there and like do fake WrestleMania for a few seconds, and then we'll just wrap up and go get some drinks. So, and then the other part of the montage that I haven't even talked about yet is this weird version of like Two Truths and a Lie that they do to kind of like train these truthsayers, where the girls go up to these people and the people say whatever, and the girls assess whether or not these people are telling the truth. Like, I don't even know if it's possible to pull off this scene. Like, a lot of people said that the Dune novels were like unadaptable, but I'd argue that this scene is unadaptable. Like, they should have left that shit on the cutting room floor or left it in the fucking books. Like, the person will say something and the sister will just be like, oh, he lying. And I'm just like, wait, that's it? That's the process? Like, she passes already? Like, we don't even get to find out if she's right or wrong? Like, there's no checks in place here? Like, how do we know she didn't just make that shit up? Like, oh, he lying. Like, that's it. I figured him out. I'm just like, what is this shit? And then this other girl, Jen, tells this terrible story that, like, at the end of it, she, like, has killed both of her parents. And she's like, psych, y'all dumb as fuck. I was just playing with y'all. And again, this felt more like a cheap imitation of, like, the Game of Thrones Faceless Man scenes with Arya, the Waif, and Jack and Hagar. Like, it felt more like that than it did Dune. And it also felt like they weren't even trying to really do a good job of it either. Like, it just felt like, yeah, we're just gonna, like, do some Game of Thrones type shit, just throw it in there. And it might be in the book, but like I said, that is a really tough scene to adapt if you don't take it a lot more seriously than this show just did. But everything in the book doesn't have to end up in the show. And maybe that montage of scenes plays out better in the book. I don't know. But on the screen, it was bad, man. Like, laughably bad. As are most of the scenes on this show that feel like cheap imitation rather than what I've come to expect out of the Dune IP. All right, now, let's talk about what I did like. Because I've been very down on the show for about 15, 16 minutes now. So let's talk about what I do like. What's keeping me watching this show? The answer to that is the central mystery. Desmond has an agenda, and it surrounds Valia and the Sisterhood. But why? Like, why does he have it out for them? And there's a lot of talk in these first two episodes about this reckoning, this prophecy that Raffaella had on her deathbed of a holy judgment brought about by a tyrant. And I haven't fully pieced together where I think this is going, but Valia sure seems to be that tyrant who is seemingly bringing about the very reckoning that she's trying to avoid. Like, her laser focus on protecting the Sisterhood had her kill Dorothea and attempt to kill Desmond. Like, Valia seems more intent on preserving the Sisterhood to her own benefit rather than to the benefit of the sisters or the Imperium. And that sounds pretty tyrant-like to me. So does that make Desmond the reckoning? Raquel told Valia she'd see the burning truth, which would be the deaths, ultimately, of Pruitt and Kasha. And who's responsible for those deaths? It's Mr. Reckoning himself, Desmond, right? Actually, let's take a brief moment right now just to talk about Desmond a little bit further. Emperor Carino sees a video of, I believe it's Desmond, seemingly getting eaten by a sandworm. Yet now, here he is in the palace with the ability to burn motherfuckers from the inside out. After Carino expresses displeasure with the upcoming wedding between Inez and Pruitt, Desmond interprets this statement of displeasure as like a request to end the marriage, and so that's why he kills Pruitt. He's doing it on behalf of the realm. It's for the good of the realm, right? Sacrifice is necessary for the emperor. And Desmond doesn't lie or attempt to hide that he did any of this. He owns it. But he makes it sound like it was asked of him when it really wasn't, at least not directly. But then it is asked of him a lot more directly. So Carino's wife, Natalia, she sees her own influence kind of lessening in favor of the truthsayers, and she sees Desmond as a weapon that can be pointed at their enemies. Duke Rachesi has been like a whole pain in the ass for these whole 2 episodes, asking for extra shit to agree to the wedding and to agree to provide this fleet, rightfully being upset when his son gets burned alive over what is told to him as this mechanical fucking salamander that he has. Apparently that's what did it. But Natalia recruits Desmond, who at this point is kind of like a naughty genie. Like, you make a statement or a slight request, and he grants that request, but like with like a treacherous twist or side effect, right? And Natalia flat out recruits him to teach Duke Rachesi a lesson, which he does, by simply sauteing him rather than actually fully cooking him from the inside out. But when Valia sees that Carino is lying about not having a suspect in Pruitt's murder, she asks to speak with Desmond, who, after putting Rachesi in his place, is now like a free man. He was suspended in the air. It was that was just weird. But he's now a free man. He's just walking around and shit. And Desmond tells Valia that the worm took his eyes, which made me laugh because that explained why he's always so funny looking. Like, he always looks like he's just like not actually seeing shit. And I'm like, maybe it's both his eyes is fake. But he's got Valia and the Sisterhood all figured out, knowing that they're plotting and scheming and chipping away at the Emperor's power to exert their own influence. He says he wants what's best for the Imperium, and that's them gone, to which Valia responds by trying to use the voice on him in the same way that she did with Dorothea 30 years earlier, but it's to no avail. So why doesn't the voice work on Desmond? She's had an additional 30 years to master it. That's another intriguing question I'd like to have answered. I'm also curious why he didn't just kill her outright right there. Like, that could be a pretty big plot hole, but they might also have an explanation for that. Like, a good one, I think, would be that he essentially has to have the kill requested. Like, someone has to say, hey, can you do this for me? Rather than him just doing it on his own. Because from his perspective, or for whatever he is perspective, that would be like murder. But now if someone important asks him to do it, then he's doing it at the behest of the realm. But I need the show to establish that, because it's weird that his goal is to get rid of the Sisterhood, but then he allows the Mother Superior to just walk away after trying to kill him. So I don't know. Moving back to Valia, before I went on this Desmond tangent, I was talking about her potentially being the tyrant that brings about this reckoning. And killing Dorothea and attempting to kill Desmond isn't the only evidence that she might be the tyrant. Remember the subplot I mentioned earlier about unrest on Arrakis? Well, we learned that even the unrest is manufactured by the Sisterhood in order to maintain balance. As the main woman that we've seen among the rebels, her name is Sister Michaela, she ends up being part of the Sisterhood. The attack that I believe is the one that supposedly killed Desmond is referred to as a beautiful manipulation by Valia. But now they need to build up the Emperor, and Michaela confirms that Valia wants to burn the whole cell of rebels on Arrakis. I don't know if that's meant to literally burn them, if it means to kill them, or if it means something else like expose them. I don't know. Either way, Valia is now ready to throw these people under the bus, as well as throw them under the bus in order to maintain the stranglehood that she has on the Sisterhood and on Carino. It's not difficult to accept that the orchestration of this attack on Arrakis is why Desmond wants the Sisterhood ended. I'd even take it a step farther and say that the actual guy, the person we're seeing named Desmond Hart, that maybe he did die when eaten by that worm, and this entity that looks like Desmond Hart to us is someone created or sent by the worm, maybe even a version of the worm itself, I don't know, but somebody with knowledge of Valia's misdeeds. Also in episode 2, we have another subplot with one of the Sisterhood's acolytes named Lila. She's going through something called the agony. Poison gets put in her eye, and it causes like a lot of scary hallucinations that, again, feel ripped right out of Game of Thrones. Excuse me. The goal here in having her do this is to hope that she could see and meet with her great-great-grandmother, Raquella. I don't know if I have enough greats on there. And learn more about this reckoning and this tyrant. Unfortunately, she does come across an ancestor. It's not Raquella, but it's Dorothea. And that was probably the single most interesting turn of events in these 2 episodes. I don't know if Lila is dead or not, but whether she is or not, the idea of Dorothea having influence from beyond the grave and possibly even giving Lila knowledge of what Valia did to her 30 years ago, that's real fucking intriguing. So I definitely want to explore that a little bit more. And regardless of my other criticisms, you can see, I think the central mystery itself is pretty interesting, even if it hasn't fully come into form yet, and even if at times feels like it's something from another IP. But on that note, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. As you can see, there's a lot to like here, and a lot that feels like collecting scraps from established superior HBO properties. I don't know, but the central story is intriguing. I think things need to escalate quickly for this show to become something I'm excited to see, and not something that I kind of feel like I'm checking in on out of duty to the property. But let me know what you thought in the comments. Am I being too hard on it? I don't know. Let's talk about it. And until next week, peace.